duties of officers in the church. Both both chapter 5 and 6 will deal with this very practical matter of the duties of the officers in the church. This gets right down to the nitty-gritty of the church life today. There is nothing romantic uh, in this, but it is very realistic and meaningful for us. The title of this section is Relationship of Ministers to Different Groups in the Local Church. Verse 1, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren. 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 1. An elder, the first relationship discussed is Timothy's relationship to elders. There has been some difference of opinion as to whether Paul is referring to the office of elder or to an elder person, someone who was older than Timothy. In the early church, the elder was an office, but the word used here refers to the individual. I think Paul had both aspects in mind. He is speaking of a mature child of God and a man who occupied a certain office. Paul means both for the simple fact that an elder was an elder, an older man. Rebuke not an elder, but entreat, exhort him as a father. Timothy was not to rebuke an elder publicly, but he was to entreat him privately. Timothy was a young man and he needed to be very tactful in his relationship with these older men in the church. In other words, he was not to take the position of a know it all or a dictator over these older men. He was to encourage them and have a word privately with them if he thought it was necessary. The younger men, as brethren, a sweet relationship should exist between Timothy and the older men and also with those of his own age. Verse 2, the elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters, with all purity. 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 2, with all purity. A minister of a church should be very careful in his relationships with the opposite sex. Nothing hurts a church more or has more frequently wrecked the ministry of a church than the sin in this area. When a minister must leave a church because of such a problem, the spiritual deadness in the church is noticeable. Nothing can destroy the spiritual life of a church more than this kind of an experience. The new morality cannot and will not work in the church. Paul has discussed Timothy's relationship with the men in the church, older and younger, and then the women, older and younger, who he comes now to his relationship with the third group. And in Celebrate Recovery, we do have the Ten Commandments of Celebrate Recovery. I knew about them beforehand. You know, I don't counsel anybody without my wife. If somebody does, we don't. She doesn't forbid me to talk to women, and I don't forbid her to talk to men. But we point to each other once the conversation starts. Here, come to and take this up with my wife. And so that's what we do. And she prays over the women, and I pray over the men. I've heard stories of how that affairs have started in the altar call, in the and praying over people. You know, the things are said and times of meeting are discussed, and instead of prayer. And so it is something that we need to be on guard of as the elders of the church, or preachers, pastors.